Hello, everyone. It's Principal Winter, and today I have the opportunity to do a couple chapters out of a book here. And the book is called Nubby's Story. And if you can look there, there's a picture of a little puppy there. So I'm going to try to share my screen here so that you can see this. And we're going to read a couple chapters. So the chapters I'm going to read is A Dog is Born and The First Night. Lou Robinson rushed around the house, searching frantically for a few items. She grabbed a blanket, a basket, and a jacket. She looked at her cell phone one more time, then picked up her car keys. Her husband, Mark, sat in a comfy chair in front of his computer screen. He was working intently and didn't notice the flurry of activity behind him. "I'm going to pick up a boxer with 2 legs," Lou called as she walked past Mark and headed towards the front door. "All right," Mark said. He heard the door shut. Wait, what did she say? A boxer with no legs? Mark must have misheard his wife. Lou drove as fast as she could through the roads of rural Texas. She and Mark lived outside of Houston, where the roads weren't very crowded. It was a cold but peaceful January day, and the fresh air allowed her to think of more clearly. Just minutes before, she had gotten a text message from a friend of a friend. It was a picture of a little white animal. The first thing that popped into her mind was, what's going on here? She immediately called her friend back. "You got to get over here quick," the woman had said. "We need your help. Our boxer just had a puppy who doesn't have any front legs." Lou had only one response. "I'm on my way." Lou was used to caring for animals. Although her first full-time job was as a photographer, she loved taking portraits of kids, couples, and animals. Any free moment she had was spent on her animal rescue organization. It was called WEAR, which stood for Warriors Educate About Rescue. She not only rescued lost or abandoned pets, but she also taught people how they could help prevent pets from ending up in an animal shelter or on the streets in the first place. As a longtime animal rescuer, she cared for dogs with all kinds of issues, but she was used to broken limbs, not missing limbs. Lou rang the doorbell, and the door opened almost immediately. "Thank you for coming so quickly," said the woman. "They're over here." Lou entered the house and spotted the white mother boxer, the brown dad boxer, and a litter of 7 puppies in the corner of the living room. When Lou stepped into the room, the mother was instantly very protective and growled like a mama dog would when a stranger approached her newborn pups. Lou paused to let the mom dog know that she was a friend. The puppies were snuggled up in the mom's belly to drink milk. They wiggled and crawled as they fought for to eat, like healthy puppies do. But one puppy was getting left behind. He was all white, with the sweetest little pink face and the tiniest ears. From a distance, he didn't look any different than his siblings, but as Lou stepped closer, she realized her friend was right. He has no front legs. Lou sat on the floor and tried to gain the mother's boxer's trust. Once the mama calmed down and seemed comfortable, Lou slowly moved the legged pup closer to its mother's tummy, so he had a chance to eat. A lot of things were running through Lou's mind. This puppy couldn't compete with his squirming brothers and sisters. He was going to get wiggled out of the pack over and over again. If he couldn't eat, he wouldn't have a chance. But taking a puppy away from its mother can be traumatic for both the puppy and the mother. After a couple of hours watching the puppies, Lou and her friend made a decision. Lou had to take home the newborn 2-legged pup and care for him. Lou bursted through the front door of her house with a small bundle in her arms. A cold breeze followed behind her. "Did you say you were going to get a boxer with no legs?" Mark asked. "No, 2 legs," Lou said. She carefully pulled back the fleece blanket and showed Mark who was hiding inside. "Woo," Mark said. He scratched his gray mustache and beard, and then placed a hand on his bald head. He couldn't believe what Lou was holding. The little pup was so tiny. He had been born just 5 hours ago. He weighed less than a pound, and he had only 2 legs. What are we going to do? Chapter 2. the first night. What were they going to do? Well, first Lou was going to panic. Here, do something with him. I have to get stuff ready, Lou said as she handed the tiny bundle to Mark. Lou found a heating pad and a black fleece blanket, then stacked them in a small wicker basket. She set it on the kitchen countertop. Mark paced around the kitchen with the puppy held gently in his arms. He rocked him and bounced him like a baby because he was all he knew how to do. Mark was tall, which made the puppy in his hands look even smaller. We're not puppy people, Mark said. Lou and Mark were dog people, sure, but they had never cared for a puppy this young or this tiny. I'm familiar with bottle feeding, but this is a neonatal puppy. What do we do? How do we feed him? What do we feed him? How the heck are we going to do this? Lou rummaged through the kitchen cabinets and grabbed a baby bottle, but it was the same size as a puppy. It was way too big. We'll reach out to the rescue community for help, she said. She had never dealt with a flat out newborn puppy who was less than a day old. Were they bottle fed the same way as a larger 1 week old puppy? She needed to find out. She adjusted the headband that was holding back her short dark brown hair with one hand as she reached for a phone with the other. Lou knew a lot of other people who ran animal rescue organizations, and they were always more than willing to help one another when they could. Her friends were sure to have some advice on caring for a pup this young, though she didn't think any of them would know how to care for a dog with only 2 legs. Lou and Mark would need to research that part on their own. We need to go to the grocery store and get some raw goat's milk, Lou said. All dogs can survive on that. At least she knew that much. Mark gently placed the pup onto the heated blanket, then grabbed his keys and coat. He stepped out into the cold and jogged towards his truck. He shook his head as he climbed in. It was dark now. He hoped this puppy would live through the night. This was stressful, but he knew this chaos would be worth it if the little puppy made it. Mark knew that he and Lou were all this puppy had. But most importantly, Mark believed in Lou, and she believed animals were important. She wanted to make a difference even if it was only one dog at a time. Today, she answered the call. She always did. And she never hesitated. Mark loved that about her. Lou had to keep the puppy hydrated while Mark was gone. They were going to need a syringe to feed this little guy. She found one in the drawer and topped it with a syringe tip, then filled it a bit of water and squeezed it slowly into the puppy's mouth, just a little bit at a time. He seemed to like it, which was a relief to Lou. They were going to keep this puppy alive drop by drop. The puppy was starting to relax. He was thirsty but tired. Someone was putting liquid in his mouth, which he was thankful for. There had been a lot of loud noises, then a cold breeze, but now it was quiet and he was feeling warm and calm and tired, so tired. When Mark returned with the goat's milk, Lou showed him how to feed the pup. First, they warmed the goat's milk, not too hot and not too cold, and then fed the puppy with a syringe, squeezing just a little bit of liquid into his mouth at a time, just like a human baby. The puppy had to be burped afterwards. Mark placed his fingers on the puppy's chest, and Lou was giving him step-by-step directions, which she was reading from messages her dog rescue friends had sent her. Hold him right between the nub and the nubby chicken wings, Lou said. She was describing the 2 short limbs where the puppy's front legs should have been. They weren't completely missing, but they were very underdeveloped. One was a stump and one was a little bit longer with elbow-like bend. Pat and then listen for a burp. Mark did as he was told, and the puppy gave a small burp. And just like a human baby, the little puppy had to be fed every 2 hours, even in the middle of the night. It was going to be a long night. Mark was already exhausted. They decided he would head to bed early. Lou planned to stay up late reading so she could do 2 feedings back to back. Then in the middle of the night, Lou would go to bed and Mark would wake up and take the next feedings. This way, each of them could hopefully get a 4-hour stretch of sleep. Besides feeding the puppy every 2 hours, there was one other issue that required constant trending. The heating pad that was warming the puppy's blanket was meant for humans. It automatically shuts off after a short period of time for safety reasons. But puppies can't regulate their own body temperatures until they are 4 or 5 weeks old. They usually stay close to their mothers and their brothers and sisters for warmth, but this puppy obviously couldn't do that. The heating pad was keeping him alive. If it accidentally turned off, the puppy would die. Mark set a timer for 1 hour and 45 minutes so they could make sure that the heating pad stayed warm throughout the night. Mark and Lou crossed their fingers. For the next 24 hours, Lou and Mark gave the tiny puppy round-the-clock care. He made it through the first night, then the second one. This tiny puppy may have looked weak, but he clearly wasn't ready to give up. 2 days after being born, he was still fighting. It felt like a miracle, but every day that followed was scary for Lou and Mark. This puppy would continue to need all the love and protection he could get, and the fact was about to be made even more clear to them. Lou's friend called to let her know that she was bringing the rest of the litter into the vet to get checked on. She offered to bring the two-legged puppy in with the rest of his siblings. Lou was tired. The last 2 days had been long, and she and Mark had barely slept. "Thanks for offering, but we'll take him in on our own," she told her friend. Lou looked at the puppy sleeping peacefully in a heating pad. The sight of him made her heart warm. A short while later, her phone rang. It was Lou's friend calling again. She should have been busy at the veterinarian's office by now. What could she possibly want? It turned out that her friend had called about something else, something that hadn't run through Lou's mind. "If you're not up for taking care of him," the vet said he could put him to sleep. Lou couldn't believe her ears. She glanced at the little white pup, his pink nose and the pink paws as he slept. He was so helpless, but he had lived 2 full days, and Lou knew he could live longer with the help from her and Mark. "Why would we want to do that?" Lou asked. "With the exception of what's on the outside, you're looking at a theoretically healthy dog. He's just missing 2 limbs." Her mind started spinning. She didn't know if this puppy was perfectly healthy, but there was a chance he was, right? And she was willing to find out. Why, if someone is willing to give him a chance, would they put this dog to sleep? Just because he's different? Lou was growing furious. "Not going to happen," Lou said. "Nubby's now in the rescue program and we'll take it from here." She hung up the phone. Who would give up on a puppy just because he needs a little extra care, she thought. This puppy isn't a typical puppy, but all he needs is a little more love and time. Different is not disposable. Mark gave Lou a hug. Nubby was the perfect name for this little pup. "We'll do everything we can to help Nubby," Mark said to Lou. "I believe in you, and our pack believes in you too." So that was chapters 1 and 2 on the book. I hope that you check this book out so that you can finish the story.